Hello, good evening once again, and live by design, not by default. Welcome to Inspirational Moments with me, Billy, and thank you for joining me this evening. In Singapore, we are getting all busy with the election season. So I've received a lot of messages to talk about the election. So no, politics has never been my topic, and never considered myself to be good enough to become a politician. So I'm just going to be sharing what I do, the kind of workshops, training, and seminars that we. All right, so once again, welcome this evening. Our topic this evening is about rapport and relationship. And speaking of relationship, definitely we will be talking or discussing about love. So thank you for joining me this evening. Let me take a quick look at see who is with us this evening. All right, first of all, of course, my team members, NLP Master Trainer Kit from Malaysia. I think my other team members, Brian and Jessica, are also with me this evening. Magalapa, Kineo, thanks for joining us once again. And I believe you are joining us from Myanmar. Welcome. Hello, Mary. Hello, Joseph. And Mindy, welcome once again. And looking forward to your participation again this evening with what you have to share with us. Hello to James. James, it's been a long time. I haven't seen you in a long time. I think your video, James, if I'm talking to the right James, I think your video, James, is still on our YouTube channel, the one where I hypnotized you. All right. Oh, yes. Brian is also with us this evening. So once again, welcome and good evening. Now, again, before we go on with this evening's topics, I'd like you to take a moment and think about if there's any people or friends, people that you know who can benefit from the session this evening. Please do share, like, and as usual, as with all my sessions, the inspirations does not just come from me. In fact, I'm just an inspirer doing my best. All right. I think lots of learning and wisdom will come from everyone who participate and join me this evening. All right. So once again, it's about rapport, relationships. And if we are speaking about relationships, definitely we are talking about expressions and we are talking about love. All right, so let me start off with that. NLP has a technique that specifically deals with rapport because it started as a technique for therapy, started as a technique for coaching. And of course, then the most important element to be present with our client is coaching. All right, hence we need to create rapport, we need to build that trust. All right, so this evening I'll be talking about NLP's rapport strategies. All right, hello Connie, hello Coleman, and hello Paul. Paul Young is joining us as well. Paul, are you now in Singapore or are you in Malaysia? Last I knew or last we communicated, I think was some time ago, and you were at that time in Singapore or working in Singapore. Uh, Hello Faz, hello Vincent and Caroline, hello Ravi. Ravi Shiva, where are you joining us from, Ravi? I can't see the picture per se because it's like so small. Thank you for the compliment. Great. I don't dare to say. Just like to share things that I've learned and found to be useful. Hello Haja, good evening as well. Thank you for joining us. All right, so this evening is about rapport. It's about relationship, and I'd like to start off by saying the first principle is people like people who are like themselves. If you look at your friends, the circle of your friends, the people who are closest to you tend to be those who have the most things in common with you. In other words, you are like them, they are like you. All right. So with NLP's rapport, yes, we have some slides tonight. With NLP's rapport, first principle is that when you are like each other, you like each other. So when you are, the more you are like each other, the more you like each other. Hence, rapport is about creating similarities. Now, if you think about it, If you are in any social functions and you are there meeting people for the first time, I think it's very normal that we strive to look for uh, commonalities, common hobby, common profession, common environment, background, and all of that. So that's something we always strive to look for. And the moment you discover that, hey, I like this particular football team and the other person also like that particular football team, then I think instantaneously you feel like very well connected. You feel like old friends already, within a matter of minutes. All right, and that's because you have something in common with each other. So the more you are like each other, the more you like each other. People like people who are like themselves. Birds of a feather flocks together. All right, once again, I'd like to welcome some of our friends. Catherine, I believe, logging in from Malaysia. Caroline, and hello, Annie. Thanks for joining us. You guys are becoming quite the regular, so I think I can always count on you to contribute and to share. Yeah. All right. So with NLP, rapport is a simple four-step strategies. All right. So first of all, you do what we call calibration. Calibration means making observations. Calibration means discovering and learning about the other person. All right. So in NLP, we want to know what is the other person's preferences, and that comes from how they prefer to think. All right. So in NLP, the way in which our brain works, the way in which our brain runs its processes is largely dependent on how we prefer to use our five senses. Right. So for people who use their sense of sight more, then we will call you the visual people. The visual people will think in pictures. They remember things by seeing. I mean, the phrase "seeing is believing" comes from visual people. Right. Then we also have people who are very sound oriented, so the sense of hearing, communication is their thing. Therefore, they develop a thinking preference of being an auditory. So they will think in sounds, conversations they've had before, or conversations that they like to have. And of course, auditory people enjoy communicating. All right, say hello once again. Oh, my wife is also joining us. She's done with the dinner. So sorry, every Tuesday I cannot join you for dinner. I'm always eating late after the session. All right, thanks Yvonne for joining as well. And Lynn, wow, we missed you, I think, in the last session because I remember there's always a lot of sharing coming from you. So looking forward to that as well. Uh, Oh, okay. There's some more people that I miss. So do feel free to say hello, please, everyone. Otherwise, when you come in and join us, I actually cannot see from the comment box that you're coming to join us. So Dorothy, Anita, Wendy, Lai Fong, Aki, Tengku Elona, and Nasruddin. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining me this evening. Okay, so as I was saying, the first thing we do is we calibrate. Calibrate is about observing the characteristics, the cues, because whatever happens on the inside reflects on the outside. So people who think visually will have a tendency to use visual words, and they will have display certain characteristics that goes along with the visual thinking preference. All right, so I was talking about visual, and I also mentioned auditory. Then we have the other three senses, right, out of the five. So you got smell, taste, and touch, which we simply just group it under the category of kinesthetic. So that means you're more feeling-oriented people. You think more feelings. Using smell, taste, and feeling is your thing, right? And therefore your brain prefers to think that way. So first thing we do is we calibrate. After we calibrate and discover if you have a preference. Okay, you guys are talking about dinner. No, I'm not having my dinner yet until the session is finished, when we end the session. All right, so yeah, chicken stew, I know, right? Hello, Joanne. Hello, Kiran. Okay, so after we do our calibration, then the next thing is to match the thinking preference. So visual people like to use words related to the sense of sight. For instance, I'm sure you have this experience. You speak to someone on the phone, and you're explaining things to them, and it was all just verbal, right? But when they respond to you after your explanation, they say things like, I see what you mean. And that happens over the phone. I mean, how do they see what you mean when there's nothing for them to see, right? But because they are more visual preference people, so they use more visual words, right? So if you discover that the person is visual or more visually oriented, then you will match them by using the visual words. Is very much likened to speaking their language. Yep. Oh, James, you are driving now. Okay, having heavy rain and it's causing jam. Do drive carefully. Don't look at the video. You can see it later on when we upload it onto YouTube, to our channel. For now, just listen to us. All right. Don't worry about typing the messages. Okay, so first thing, you calibrate, meaning you observe, you look out for the cues, you listen out for the cues. Then you will match them, and then you will mirror them. So rapport is established by matching and mirroring. Now, mirroring means you observe the external body language of the other person and you form a mirror image with the other person. For example, you will see that auditory people, you can notice that they like to tilt their head slightly. So when you are dealing with an auditory person, you also mirror their body language by tilting your head slightly. And of course, this has to be done in a very graceful and elegant manner, in a very subtle manner. So make it as natural as possible. Otherwise, they will think that you are mimicking, all right? And mimicking actually breaks rapport. But matching and mirroring creates rapport. Next comes pacing. Pacing is about matching them and pace them at the emotional level, at the emotional state. For example, now that we're all back to work, a lot of people are working harder than before we had our circuit breaker and our work from home and movement control. Now people are working a lot harder trying to catch up on the months of not being in the office. So a lot of parents, adults will come home physically tired, right? Yet when you come home, your kid is all energetic and enthusiastic, coming to you, hello, hey, daddy, I want to tell you this, and they were so all excited. So they're in a state of being very energetic, very enthusiastic. All right, but you are already very tired. So at that moment, if you're going like, okay, no, all right, okay, all right, you know what, daddy is very tired. Okay, let me rest. All right, later then we talk, and so that means you're not pacing with them at the emotional level. All right, so pacing here to build rapport means being at the emotional state that is matching with them, that's the same with them. All right, and then you can do leading. That's when you can test for rapport. That's when you can influence people's decision. So start by creating the rapport first. Now rapport is like money, which is, in that sense, you only realize you're in trouble when you don't have enough. All right, so my take is, I think the moment you leave home, just get yourself into that state to connect with people. I believe that people don't meet by accident. There's a reason why we meet. So, even if it's just that one meeting, even if it's just an acquaintance, let's give each other our best effort when we are with each other. All right, so the 4 steps are calibrate, calibration, matching, mirroring, pacing, and leading. Okay, at this moment, I'd like to hear from the rest of you with any comments. What's your take? How do you go about building rapport with people? Do you realize and observe that the people you are closest with have a lot of things in common with you? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Need to practice being elegant. Yeah. I think it's all about practicing, because initially when you're doing it, you're very conscious about it. And when you are conscious about it, you will do what you're supposed to do. But then you are too aware in that sense. All right. We call that conscious competence. So what needs to happen is you practice, and practice, so that you can do it without even the need to pay attention to it. All right, and yet be very competent. All right, we call that unconscious competence, and that definitely, of course, requires a lot of practice. Okay, now how many of you come across people whom, no matter how hard you try, you just oh, just different chemistry. Just for some reasons you just cannot connect with people. Have you come across people like that before in the past? And if you think back now, if you now have the skills and the ability to calibrate, you know how to do it, match people and mirror these people, would that have changed the dynamics of that relationship? Yeah. So rapport can be done. The four steps can be done within a matter of minutes, and even within a matter of a minute if you become very skillful in it. All right. So practice, practice, practice is the key, as with any skills that we all like to acquire. All right. So calibration, matching, mirroring, and pacing and leading. Also, another thing, rapport and resistance. These two R's don't coexist together. As in, when rapport goes up, resistance will go down. So when you are faced with resistance from people, probably rapport is down. So you need to be able to bring up rapport so that you can influence people better. Those of you who are in sales, you can connect with your prospects and your customers better. Those who are in customer service can connect with your customers better, of course. And those of us who are in leadership position, knowing how to calibrate, match, mirror, pace, and lead to create rapport, also help to build trust. All right, so which I think is an important element if you're working closely with one another. All right, so these are the three mental maps or representational systems that I've mentioned. We also call this modalities. Okay, big words. Primarily, thinking patterns or thinking preferences are either more visually oriented or auditory or kinesthetic. So sense of sight, communication and sounds, or feeling oriented people. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on also that whatever happens on the inside reflects on the outside. These are some quite typical visual words and phrases. So I kind of highlighted them for you. So that you can see it and become more aware of it. Because usually during a communication, during an encounter with someone, we tend to more focus on the content of what we are discussing, the topic of what we're discussing, and not so much paying attention to details like this. All right. So once you start putting this into practice, I guarantee you your communication with a fellow human being will never be the same anymore. All right, so visual people tend to use words related to the sense of sight. For example, I am looking closely at your proposal. So if the boss say I'm looking closely at your proposal, it doesn't mean that they are literally right, but what it means is they are paying attention to it. Okay, we also sometimes use phrases like, hey, we can see eye to eye, and what does that mean? That means we have rapport, we can connect. All right, auditory people will probably use words related to sound to mean the same thing. Auditory people may say things like we can click or we are on the same frequency. Okay, so those are auditory words. Whereas kinesthetic people may say things like, I can feel the chemistry between us, chemistry or mixing together. All right, words like the blind spot, looking back, on hindsight, it flashed before my eyes, my view, I see what you mean, I got the green light, we are in the red. Colors are more visually oriented. All right, or can you picture that, imagine? Visual people like to say things like, I'm looking forward to see you. So you can hear a lot of words that is closely related to the sense of sight when you're dealing with a visual person. So words will be one of the first things you want to calibrate when you're dealing with people. Then comes auditory, who will use phrases related to the sense of hearing and sounds. Auditory people say things like, I'm turning a deaf ear. All right, that means they are not paying attention, they don't care. Or that sounds like music to my ears. All right, because auditory people somehow have rhythm operating inside them. All right, so words related to sounds would be words they prefer to use. They may say things like, we're on the same wavelength. As I also mentioned earlier on, same frequency, we can work in harmony. That sounds like a great idea. Does this ring a bell? All right, so they use, basically what it means is they use words more related to the sense of hearing and sounds, okay? And kinesthetic people obviously will use words related to the sense of touch and feeling. Example would be, let's keep in touch. That doesn't mean that every time you see one another, you know, especially now, we're not supposed to even have a handshake, okay? Or they say things like, I can grasp that idea. Hold on a second. Have you heard someone say things like that? Hold on a second. And I pretty much think and believe that none of us go like, okay, wait a minute, how do you hold on to a second? But holding is a feeling word, all right? Or I feel it, very straightforward. So that one I didn't highlight it for you. Or other description, such as this is a very warm-hearted person. Warm is a feeling. This guy is so cool. That's a feeling. All right. Firm foundation. Firm. That's a feeling. Heated argument. That's heat. That's a feeling. Following you, not following the topic. I can handle that, very touching. So they use words related to feelings. Okay, so for now, I want a little bit of response from you. How many of you, prior to hearing something like that, if you're hearing this for the first time, how many of you start thinking back and realize that, yeah, indeed, when I deal with people, yeah, there were people who seem to have a tendency to use certain sensory words more than the others, right? And how about yourself? Did you? Right, okay. Joseph just gave a very good example. You know, in response to what people say, you may say things like, I feel you. Okay, so if you naturally use words like that, then that tells us your primary thinking preference is more visual, auditory, or more kinesthetic, right? But if you observe that other people are using words like that, and you are using the same words, you are literally speaking their language, which means now you are already doing matching. So Joseph, if you are saying that in response to me, you know, using a lot of kinesthetic phrases, reflecting a possible kinesthetic preference in my thinking, then you have just matched me by speaking my lingo. All right, okay, Lean has something to share. Language is so interesting. Words you use to relate to audio, visual, and kinesthetic. That's right. It's about paying attention to people. People are always reflecting a lot more, you know, to our behaviors or micro expressions. It's just that most people don't pay attention to things like that. They're more concerned with the content. Yeah. James, I very much want to share this. Okay, it's an adult channel. Where does now that the okay, I don't quite get that phrase though, because I don't think I hear that a lot or ever heard that before. Okay, so don't know, find another expression. Okay, all right, so that's these are the phrases that they will use. So very useful, especially nowadays where we do a lot of messaging over WhatsApp and group chats. You cannot hear the tone, you can't observe the body language, you cannot see how the person prefer to move their eyes when they're accessing information and other behavioral traits and characteristics. Then you can pretty much count on words that people prefer to use. Yeah. All right, so how we go about practicing this is this, you know, for the next one whole week, start paying attention to not just what people say, but how do they say what they say. What are the words that they use more of? Now, if you are dealing with people who, you know, like the majority of us, where all our five senses are intact, then it's quite normal that I may use all sensory words, right? So don't get confused with that. Just pay attention to which one I prefer and which do I use more of, okay? So that will be the key. All right. Yep. Here's another one with kinesthetic. Are you kinesthetic, Joseph? You seem to be very good at these kinesthetic phrases. Catch no ball. So catch the ball. Meaning catch no ball means I don't understand you, or I'm not following the topic. I'm not following the discussion. Right? So these are just some examples. There are of course many other ways, many other expressions and phrases. So first thing first, we calibrate this, and then you match people with the words they prefer to use. Okay, next up, we look at the eye patterns. Now, do you realize that your eyes move when you're thinking? When you're accessing information, you realize your eyes move. Think about the last person with whom you have a conversation with today. Now, when I ask you to think about you having a conversation with the person, did you notice your own eyes move in a certain direction? Right? According to NLP, this is what we call eye patterns. Right? When people are thinking visuals, their eyes tend to go upwards. Okay, so this is the picture on the slide is oriented to the person as you look at the person. All right. So if you look at me and if my eyes go up, of course, now I kind of lost the orientation of whether I'm mirrored or not mirrored the way you see me. Okay, like this is my left. Okay, so if I'm saying something and along the way my eyes move up to the left, that means visual remembered. We interpret it as that for normally organized people. And normally organized people means people who are right master eye, who are right master hand. Okay. So if you look at me as I'm talking or before I speak, my eyes go up to the left. What is happening is in my mind, I am remembering a scenario. I'm remembering a visual. Okay. So in NLP, we call that visual remembered. If my eyes go up to the right, then that's visual construct, which means that the scenario, the situation probably hasn't happened yet, but that I'm constructing, I'm imagining how it would happen. Okay, my eyes move to the side left, that's remembering sound. So I'm recalling and remembering things I've said or heard before. If my eyes go to my right, then I'm constructing what to say. Okay, again, for normally organized people. If you look at me and notice that my eyes go down to my left, then I am doing what we call self-talk or auditory digital. That would be the NLP phrase for it. That means I'm having an internal dialogue. So usually, if you're talking to people and you notice that as you are talking, they broke eye contact with you and that they look down to their left, then what probably is happening in their mind is that they're analyzing what you just said. Okay, if you find that the person you're talking to have a tendency to move their eyes down to their right, that means they are accessing feelings, so they will be more kinesthetic. Okay, now for eyes and the eye patterns, use this just for observation. All right, you do not need to mirror or match the eye patterns, because if it's not your preferred style of thinking, right, you try to like deliberately move your eyes in a certain direction, then probably nothing come out inside your mind. All right, it's a very spontaneous, a very unconscious process, right? But that said, because we are learning this and we're applying this, you will probably be more conscious as you're observing people now, and the way they move their eyes. Okay, and also becoming more aware and more conscious of how you yourself move your eyes. All right, so take notice of that. That probably tell you what are your own preferences, because I know that a lot of us will be very curious about our own preferences. So we want to know what is our own preferences, our own thinking patterns. Parents with kids who are school-going kids can be quite useful if you help them to observe the phrases they like to use and how their eyes tend to move, their natural eye movements, because that allows you to teach them how to study, how to what to do in order to do well in their studies. Like for example, if they're visual, then probably best for them to learn how to do mind mapping and drawing when they're trying to memorize things for their exams. Because if they're visual, then what need to happen during exam is you just need to go move their eyes upwards to the visual remembered position to recall what they have seen before. Yeah, and of course auditory, best to pay attention during class when teachers are talking. And kinesthetic, probably doing is your thing, you know, so doing a lot of practicing, writing, repeatedly writing a certain paragraph or definitions help you to memorize those definitions better, right? Like for during school time, we have never been taught things like that, so I never knew what kind of what is my own thinking preference, and therefore how I should be studying that works with my natural preference, right? So I tend to do a lot of writing and repeating repeatedly saying that paragraph, to try and memorize that paragraph doesn't work for me. I'm more a visually oriented person. So if only I have learned mind maps, that would probably work a lot better for me during exams, which I only got to know like, after I left school. And when I start going back to school and learning NLP, I start to pay attention to things like that about other people as well as myself. So for I parents, there's no need for you to try and match and mirror them, because if it's not your natural style, you will find it quite difficult, because it's like, hey, nothing comes up, if you deliberately move your eyes in the certain position, but rather it's for you to observe the other party. All right, so start paying attention to people's eyes. And as of this moment, what was the very first thing I said this evening? Can you try and remember that? And now notice where your eyes go to. Did you move your eyes? Give me some feedback. Type yes if you move your eyes, or just simply a thumbs up. That will let me know that you behave in the same way that we are teaching. Okay, so with the eye movements, we move on to characteristics. There are different traits and behaviors. So V is for visual, auditory it's for A is for auditory, and K is for kinesthetic. When it comes to speaking, the way they speak and their speech patterns. Visual people tend to speak quickly, and because they speak quickly, the pitch will get higher and higher. So you tend to go on a higher pitch as they speak. Now, have you heard of this expression? A picture speaks 1,000 words. Yeah, which means visual people will just think of a picture and they have like 1,000 words to say to describe their picture. So the natural tendency to speak quickly and at a higher pitch, right? Auditory people are more sensitive to sound, so they are sensitive to how other people sound, your tone, your vocal, the words you use, and because of that, their natural tendency is they also pay attention to how they sound. They tend to have clear, expressive, and rich voice. Auditory people have a nice voice that is nice to listen to. Kinesthetic people will speak with a deeper voice, and they tend to go slower with pauses. So can you imagine, prior to learning about calibration, matching, and mirroring, a kinesthetic person is talking to a visual person. Visual person will be very fast. The kinesthetic person will be very slow and with a lot of pauses. And what naturally tends to happen is the visual person will finish up the sentence, or fill in the blanks for the kinesthetic person when the kinesthetic person is pausing. And what would happen, if you notice, like from afar, you can see, like, then they're not like matching with each other. So rapport is down. Head position. Visual people head up, shoulder tense. Visual people stand up straight, balance on both feet. They also tend to sit upright and straight, and their body language is kept straight up, because visual people believe somehow, because they are more visually oriented, that by keeping themselves very upright and straight, they can see more. So visual people just like to see and visually take in things. Auditory people head tend to lean to one side, and not just the head, the body also like to lean to one side. If they're standing, they will be distributing their weight on one side, so they tend to lean to a side. Kinesthetic people head will more be angled downwards like this. Yeah, so there you go, visual, auditory people, and kinesthetic people, because this is where they access feelings, and because of that, naturally they develop postures like that. Okay, so that would be visual, auditory, and kinesthetic people's head and head positions and body language. Visual people will take short and shallow breath, and they breathe high up at the chest. All right. I don't know if you are aware of this, because communication is largely unconscious. Do you realize that it is impossible to breathe in and talk at the same time? Like, for instance, try saying things like, visual people speak quickly at a higher pitch. Okay, say this sentence, but I want you to like breathe in when you say this sentence. Ready? Try, go. Hard, right? Okay, so actually to detect people's breathing, you can see it from the speech patterns because we breathe out as we are talking. Now, visual people will breathe in and they will hold their breath if they're accessing information. They will hold their breath for that moment. All right, so that's when it becomes easier to detect. Otherwise, observing breathing can be quite challenging, especially now with social distancing. But or maybe it's a good thing you can actually see breathing from afar rather than by standing too close. Auditory people breathe evenly over the chest area. Kinesthetic people tend to breathe slower and tend to take more deep breaths. All right, so these are the different breathing patterns that we can pay attention to. All right, let's see. So Lynn have both posture. Sharon's have a message. A kid with slight ADHD syndrome and loves touches like hugs and holding hands, but speaks extremely fast. Would they be more kinesthetic or visual? Very good question. When someone, a kid, for instance, in this case, if the kid is diagnosed to have ADHD, that means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think it's still subjective. I would not classify to say that ADHD people means they are necessarily visual or auditory or kinesthetic. So it's still very individualized. So you make your observation, but I also want to caution. These days we use phrases like this quite commonly, and that when adults say things like that to a kid, hey, you ADHD, hey, why you cannot keep still, you ADHD. I mean, think about it. Kids have a lot of energy, right? And they're very distracted by so many things, and everything is interesting to them. So quite naturally, they may be, thinking very quickly. And also, kids these days grow up with, I mean, before they even learn how to walk, they're already watching cartoons and iPad where motions happen very fast. They're playing games on their smartphone that requires them to think very fast and act very fast. And so if the same kid who is brought up with that kind of environment and they think fast and they act fast, suddenly they have to be in class and keep quiet and listen to the teacher for a whole lesson of say 14 minutes, I think I will be ADHD too, right? Unless my teacher is very engaging. All right, so that brings me to another thing. If you're making presentation, because in every group there are bound to be visual, auditory, or kinesthetic people, you would have a natural tendency to use words that suits your thinking preferences, but which may not connect with the audience. Or for instance, if I'm visual and then I speak quickly and I use a lot of visual words, I probably connect with the visual in the audience a lot better. Whereas kinesthetic people or auditory people may find that I speak too fast for them. All right, so it's important that you also moderate your speed to match the different mental maps, the different representational systems, the different preferences. Yeah. Okay, so now coming back to Sharon's. So if they speak extremely fast, but still like touches and hugs, holding hands, would they then be kinesthetic or visual? I would say if that's the case, then I would probably classify them as visual kinesthetic. Yeah, because Milton Erickson, Dr. Milton Erickson, the father of modern hypnotherapy, he said that kinesthetic is a derived modality, which that means prior to being kinesthetic, there's the likelihood there's a visual auditory that is before the kinesthetic. So in that sense, I would describe the person as visual kinesthetic. So it is possible to be both. Yeah. And of course, there are some people who are also who are very balanced with all three modalities. I find that to be quite rare, but people like that are gifted in a sense that they can connect with anybody they like, unconsciously and just naturally. Right? For the rest of us, we have to be more conscious when we are doing when we're making our observations. We have to be more conscious when we are dealing with people. All right, so calibrate the words, the breathing pattern, the speech patterns, the way they speak, how they sound. their eye movements, how they orientate their body, if they're upright, straight, or others, and their breathing patterns, if you can. Okay, I think I have one more thing that I have not elaborated. That will be the gesturing and their body language and body posture. Visual people tend to sit and stand upright, and they tend to gesture upwards. Visual people tend to have a lot of gestures, and probably a lot of very exaggerated gestures as well. Their hands are all over the place. Like me, if you notice, see I'm talking like that. Yeah, hands can't stay within the camera, within the camera angle. Okay, auditory people are rhythmic. So when they speak, there seems to be like a rhythm in the way they speak. Auditory people, as I mentioned, like to lean their head slightly to the side. So it's quite natural that they would put their hand near their ears or their mouth, and their lips will move even when they're not talking. Example, kinesthetic would be if I'm talking and they're listening to me, they will probably go. So the lips are moving even when they're not talking. So these are other body language and gesture cues. Kinesthetic people would have relaxed posture and more rounded shoulders because they are more akin to the sense of smell, taste, and touch, right? So these are the characteristics to pay attention to. And yes, suddenly it seems like, okay, there's a lot of things to pay attention to when we're dealing with people. So it's no longer the content anymore, but of course the content, and also do start paying attention and becoming more aware and conscious about all these behavioral cues so that you can match and mirror them. So obviously words you match, right? Eye patterns, I say you just observe. Speech, the voice and the speed, that one you will match. Head position you will mirror. Breathing you will match. Gestures you will mirror. But of course, say if you're talking to me in front of me now, I'm a visual person, so I use a lot of gestures. Obviously, when you're listening to me, you don't go and mirror my gestures at the same time as you're listening when I'm talking, because then it looks kind of funny, right? What are you using your hands for? But if you notice I have tendency to use my hands like that, then just pay attention so that when it's your turn to talk, you do the same gestures. So remember, people like people who are like themselves. All right. So that's for rapport. Oh, good. I'm glad that it makes sense now for you, Sharon. All right. So pay attention to how people project themselves, how they communicate. It's not just what they say, but it is how they say what they say. It's not just what they do, it's how they do what they do. All right, and from there, you calibrate by observing all these cues, you match, and then you mirror and you pace with them to build rapport. Now, once you have done the calibration, matching, mirroring, and pacing, how do you know that you have a connection or not? All right, so first off, let me explain also that NLP is based on discovery and observations. NLP is not an invention, meaning we didn't invent these steps, but rather the early developers and founders of NLP make observations when people interact and observe that people consciously and unconsciously match and mirror each other when they have rapport and when they have trust. All right, so the way we can we can tell if we have rapport with someone is, first of all, a sense of connection, a sense of comfort. You're feeling comfortable with talking with this person, communicating and dealing with the person, and that you can do leading. That means, if I mirror you with your body language, so let's say, you cross your hands as you're talking to me and I'm crossing my hands as well, then what happens is, after mirroring you for a while, I can change my body language a little and see if you follow. That's called leading. All right, if I, after matching and mirroring, and then I change, and you follow me, that means I've taken the lead. All right, then that is a sign that you have rapport with the other person. Okay, leading also means that that's the time for you to ask for what you want. That's the time for you to influence the person. Okay, so next question here is this: knowing this, Uh, Next is about practicing. But of course, then how do you deal with each patterns more effectively, uh, above and beyond just having rapport with that person? How do we deal with these different modalities? Okay, and this is where I'd like you to think a little bit deeper into this, and perhaps you'd like to comment and tell me, if you're dealing with a visual person, what must you do so that you can engage a visual person better? If you're dealing with an auditory person, what do you do? If you're dealing with a kinesthetic person, what do you do? Okay, so I'll take a little breather and wait for your comments. We have like about 25 seconds left. What do we do to engage visual people? And what would you do to engage auditory? What would you do to engage the kinesthetic people? Okay, let me take a moment and okay, there's a lot of hearts. Thank you very much for all the hearts. Love all the hearts. Yeah, but beyond the hearts, come on, talk to me. Tell me, what would you do with the different modalities, knowing that they have different preferences? What would you do? Yeah. Okay, more hearts are coming. I assume that means what? You like the information or what? Okay, my in return to you, that's my emoji explosion. All right, all my hugs and thumbs up for you. All right, so what would you do in order to engage a visual person? What would you do to engage an auditory person? What would you do to engage the kinesthetic people? Okay, going back to the slides now as I take a breather. Okay, let's see. Okay, someone I know, I feel is a visual and auditory, interested in design art. Okay, it has a little bit of bearing on the things they prefer to do with regard to their senses. For example, I would think that auditory people, because they are rhythmic unconsciously, there seems to be a rhythm that's functioning inside them. I wouldn't necessarily say that they will be perfect singers, but they will probably like music more. Auditory people, in fact, will move and sway and walk according to the beat of the music, if indeed there are music playing in the background. Yeah, right. And there are some people, let me see, if you're asking what movie was about, never able to answer, describe images, remembers vaguely. Okay, you just have to calibrate the person, their individual. And like I said, if you have all five senses intact, then there's likelihood that I may even like design. All right, but like in my case, I'm visual, so I'm not good at drawing. Up till today, I'm still drawing sticks man and sticks human. That's my way of drawing. Maybe with the help of emoji now, I can draw a smile and more expressions. But otherwise, no, I'm not good at drawing. But I'm good at forming pictures, and I like movies. Yes, but sound matters to me too. See, because I have the five senses, right? So it can be situational, in other words, right? During that situation, if I'm watching a movie, then obviously I'm more tuned, my visual senses or sights will be more tuned up, right? Okay, Benny, let me see. Visual probably. Okay, in response to my question. Okay, Benny said for visual people, show pictures, show statistics, show numbers. Yes, that would be my strategies too. That would be what I would do too if I'm dealing with a visual person. Okay, Mindy, visual people, they will talk fast. So yes, talk faster when you're dealing with visual people. Let me see what Sharon said. If I have a group of people of different modalities to influence in a meeting, how do I build rapport with all of them at one go? You vary your styles. If it's not a very big group, I will actually still pay attention and calibrate them. And because I'm speaking to a group, I will probably be moving, shifting my eyes and making eye contact with different people. And if I'm having eye contact with a visual person at this moment, then I'll probably speak a lot faster. But if I'm dealing with an auditory person, then I want to pay a bit more attention to my voice. And of course, I have a kinesthetic person here. That means, all right, so notice how I just demonstrated dealing with different people and different modality all at one go, is that you vary your styles. Yeah. Okay, so Lynn is getting confused now with people who seem to display different styles. Okay, I think because now you're doing a recall, it gets a bit challenging, trying to think back everything that happened. What I would recommend is go engage and communicate with the person again in a neutral setting so that they can let their natural pattern show rather than being like, for example, if I ask you, what is your opinion? Obviously, you're going to have to be thinking auditory. So it's a directed, you're being led to think in a certain way, right? So I will not take that and use that as an opportunity to calibrate, right? Okay, let me see. Mary also have a comment here. I need to talk faster with visual people so that they won't get bored. Yeah, because you talk to them, they start forming visual images, and so one visual image can capture a lot of contents. Yep. Okay, Mindy has some suggestions for big groups, especially in a corporate setting. Would it make sense to what? Build rapport with the leader or manager first. I wouldn't necessarily say that. In fact, I think that because we do leadership workshops, I always feel that leaders should take leadership first. So if I'm a leader with a team, I will calibrate my people, not the other way around. All right, but okay, if you're looking at a traditional setting with a big group, first of all, you will connect with the people whose patterns, whose natural preferences are the same as yours, right? It's only the effort to match and mirror those who are not like you. So I would say depend on who you're communicating with. If you're talking to the leader, then match the leader. If you're talking to the assistant, then you match the assistant. All right, so you basically match people according to their preference and you mirror them according to individuals. Okay, let me see. For Lynn, I guess when it's a group setting, you need to have a good mix of everything. Sharon's? Okay, that's a message for you. Joseph. Joseph said, I was seeing when working with different colleagues to build rapport with them. Somehow it works every time. Joseph, in your setting, I'm guessing that you work with more ladies. Yeah. Because my observation is majority of men are more visually oriented, meaning in the man population, more men are visual. All right, whereas more ladies are auditory. Kinesthetic is like a mix of both. All right, Mindy didn't think of that. That's the point of our discussion, right? That's why I like to make this as interactive as possible. All right, so true, just worry I might get confused myself first. Yeah. Hence, we need to practice. I remember when I first learned NLP, I was working in an MNC, and I reported to a division head. I was a department manager, and I remember when I start to apply these things that I learned, I would have a conversation with him. He would instruct me and tell me things. And I remember back then I would pay attention to the words, and after a while I go like, mine is visual kinesthetic. But then I realized, oh my God, I don't know what he just told me. Because I was paying attention on his words and characteristics, I was conscious about that. I did not pay attention to the content. All right, so I end up having to, I'm sorry, Mike, can you just repeat what you just said? And after a while, I think it took me a few weeks to practice this. And I remembered at some point he looked at me and go like, okay, Billy, are you having any problems lately, or what happened to you? And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, because you used to be very sharp. I tell you something, you can think in different directions, but lately you keep asking me to repeat myself. It's as if you're here but not really here. So what happened was I was like calibrating and paying attention and being too overly conscious about his words, his thinking preferences, and his characteristics, and then I wasn't paying attention to the content. All right, so from my experience, I hope you understand that you don't go and practice it on your boss. You don't go and practice it with your most important VIP customers, because then you will listen and go, auditory. Oh my God, what did he want? What did he ask me to do? Right? And then you're not paying attention to the content. So I guess best is to practice with friends and family members, because if they get offended that you're not paying attention to them, You just have to explain to them about what they've just learned and that you're actually practicing it. Yeah. Okay, still learning calibration. Yes, I'm also learning calibration and paying attention. Let me see. Mary say Joseph provided their voice are nice. Auditory people will have like nice voices. If you think about it, like call centers, a lot of times they engage ladies, right? Naturally sounding good over the phone. That would be a good prerequisite. I think they just naturally fit into that kind of job. Okay, Mindy says for sales presentations where one person is pitching to a group of people, would it make sense to first connect to the decision maker, then only work on building rapport with the rest? Like I said, Mindy, I think it's subjective. It depends on what is your objective in that meeting. If you are the presenter, then I would say you have to rotate your styles to match the different people rather than going with your own preferred preferences and sticking to one type, because then you're only connecting with the people that are having the same preferences as you. Yeah. Okay, Joseph said the mood becomes conducive. Mood becomes conducive to work together. Everyone was giving their best effort. Even our customers can feel the mood around us. Yep, we certainly can feel atmosphere. Speaking as a customer, I can feel if the people working can get along with each other. What's the atmosphere? What's the mood like? I can pay attention to whether they are naturally matching and mirroring each other. Another thing, if you pay attention to and observe couples who have been who are very in love and very connected to one another, you find that after a while, they look like each other, they behave like each other, they become like each other, all right, because they naturally have rapport and they naturally have already built rapport with one another. In fact, I think the living things have a way of connecting with each other that's so interesting. Like we see owners look like dogs and the dogs look like the owners. Remember 101 Dalmatian? All right. Okay. So these are some things you can do in order to build the rapport and to build the relationship. So because relationship is very very qualitative. It's kind of, you don't measure or hard to measure relationships. So we came up with this little levels of relationship that we can use to track. Okay, because we want to build rapport with people, we want to strengthen relationships with people. So people either work with each other. So Joseph, looking at your team, for example, the mood that's created by the team, are they already consciously or unconsciously matching and mirroring each other, creating rapport within the team that then project that the atmosphere that they can get along and they are very joyful with each other. So people work with each other either because they are forced to, or they have to, need to, want to, like to, or love to. All right, I think from the words alone you can tell love to will be like the desired level that we will strive to achieve as far as relationships are concerned. Yeah. For those of you who are married, I think years ago when you guys come together, decided to get married, your level of relationship was at that love to level. If it has been 5 years since, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years since, now is he or she's your spouse still married to you because love to, or has that level drop? So I think this is when this concept becomes useful. We can use this to be mindful and to track the quality of our relationship, to strive for a love to relationship. Okay, so if you're the leader working with your group of people, your people may be assigned to work with you. So in that sense, maybe they work with you because they are being forced to, because they have to, because they need to. Then our job is to bring our relationship to the next higher level, to want to like to love to. All right, so the question we ask ourselves is, first we determine which level is our relationship level. All right, so if I'm working with a team of 5 people, with the first person, what's our level of relationship like? And then I will ask myself, what must I do to take the relationship to the next higher level? All right, so our job obviously is to strive, or rather, what I recommend, that we strive to strengthen our relationships and build it to a level of love too when we are dealing with people. Yes, I'm aware some of you have to go, all very busy with a lot of online sessions and meetings and all to do. Okay, so this will be my recommendation. Those of you who are parents with kids, your kids are your kids because they are forced to, have to, need to, want to, like to, or love to. Our job is, what must I do in order to take our relationship to the next higher level? And if you're in leadership position, definitely be the one to strive to build better relationships and elevate in the level of relationship with your people. No for one day like to, no for 1 year love to, no for 10 years have to, no for this is interesting. Known for 1 day is like to. No for 1 year is love to. No for 10 years is have to. No for X years and above is need to. Yes, that's when we need to ask ourselves, what must I do to bring the relationship level back up? If we started, right then, it's also good. Let's all put in effort to continue to make it good, like hence we said today's topic, first rapport, then we discuss relationship, then we discuss love. A lot of times I believe that we ourselves must manage ourselves from inside out, so that we ourselves is a container of joy, of peace, of love. I think the problem with relationship, like how Lynn has described it, is this, that two person coming together, they are extracting love from the other person. All right, so that's when, it's lovely, the relationship is lovely, the other person is lovely, everything they do, wow, it's just nice and cute. All right, after a while it's no longer cute. That's because you're extracting and expecting from the other person. I think, or rather I suggest and recommend, that let ourselves be a container of love, pleasantness, and joy, so that love is expressed and not extracted from the other person and not expected of the other person. Let us each do our part to bring our relationship with people to the next higher level. All right, Mindy says, does it always start with force? No, not necessary. All right, just that would be like the worst level to have, right? But that at work, maybe you have people who work with you because they have to. So not that connected with you, but just for work's sake, right? Then I think we can work even better and produce better work if we strengthen relationships. Yeah, so my take would be, take leadership, be the one who demonstrate it, be the one who put in the effort, be the one who initiate, and be the one to create rapport, so that we strengthen the relationships and do what is necessary to take our relationship to a higher level, and not expect that from the other person or extract that from the other person. I think we need to make relationships an expression, like I said earlier, not an extraction. Yeah, I also had a quote which I had used before, and I thought it might be useful for today. That if you think deeper with this quote, don't just be blessed, be a blessing. Now, what I also mean is, obviously, don't just count our blessings, right? But as we go about dealing with people, interacting with the world around us, be a blessing with other people. It also means that we think deeper with this quote. If love, peace, and happiness comes from you, it comes from within you. Nobody needs to extract from you. You become the giver, not the extractor. Think about it. Those relationships that where people put in effort and build it to a level of love too. How did it become bad? Is when the starting point is already wrong, whereby they are extracting from each other rather than it's an expression from self. See, like the emoji busting each time each time I come back to this particular scene. All right, so I hope that adds value to you, and give me a thumbs up if you have learned something useful tonight. And of course, thanks to those who participate with your questions and sharing your own strategies about what you will do. Right. So with that, I hope that we can all go out and strengthen our relationships as we interact with the people we work with, as we interact with the world. Okay, let me see. One more question. Person I know always have something in both their hands. Does it show kinesthetic? Possible. Or is it some kind of security blanket? Okay, this is a good question. It's a good question because we need to hence be more observant to not just that one thing that people do, but it's a combination of things. So, everything add up. Is this person more inclined towards visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? Yeah. And then of course put in our effort and do what we need to do to build our relationships with one another. Think about it. If the world is filled with people who put in effort to build relationships with one another, I think the world can become potentially a beautiful and very peaceful and joyful world. Okay, so with that, I hope we have all picked up something. I certainly had learned something from you too. And your questions allow me to share more and talk more. All right, so that's it for this evening. Once more, I'd like to remind everyone to please join us and subscribe to our social media channels, starting with this particular Facebook page, Billy Craig International, where we stream live every Tuesday at 8, and I'll do my best to do it every week. So far, I think I missed like a couple of times. All right, and also all past episodes are available on YouTube, so please go to our YouTube channel, like the channel, subscribe, and enjoy what we share with you. And please leave us comments as well, just as you do with all the comments during our live stream. We are also on Instagram, and I have a Facebook page, or rather a few Facebook pages now. The latest one is a page because the personal one has reached a maximum. I cannot add new friends, and I've been meeting new people, and new people have been requesting to add. I'm sorry, I cannot do that, but just join me at Billy Craig without the space in between. Like the page, follow us. Have a great week ahead. Start putting this into practice and look at people and start observing people, and remember to build our relationships to a high level so that people deal with you. They are working with you. They are in your social circle, not because they have to or need to, but because they want to, because they like to, because they love to. All right, so with that, good night, everyone. I shall end the stream now. So see you again next Tuesday. Bye bye.